Most people ruin their lives by caring too much. Not too deeply, but too desperately. The more tightly you try to control life, the more life slips through your hands. Relationships become exhausting. Success feels distant. Your mind never rests. And even moments of peace begin to feel temporary because internally, you are always fighting reality itself. And the terrifying part is that many people spend years believing this tension is ambition, when in truth, it is fear disguised as effort. What if the reason nothing feels natural anymore is not because you are failing, but because you are forcing? The ancient Stoics understood something modern society continues to ignore. When your emotional state becomes dependent on outcomes you cannot control, suffering becomes inevitable. Not because life is cruel, but because your mind becomes chained to uncertainty. And uncertainty is something no human being has ever conquered. But strangely, everything begins to change the moment you stop gripping life so tightly. Not when you become lazy, not when you stop trying, but when you stop attaching your peace to every result, every opinion, every expectation, and every future possibility. Because there is a profound difference between commitment and emotional dependence, and most people never learn it. In this video, we will explore why letting go is not weakness, but power, why detachment creates clarity, and why the moment you stop caring in the wrong way is often the exact moment your life begins to work again. 1. The illusion of control is destroying your peace. One of the greatest sources of human suffering is the belief that if we think hard enough, worry long enough, or force things intensely enough, we can control outcomes. But the Stoics repeatedly warned against this illusion. Epictetus taught that some things are within our control and others are not. Simple in theory, life-changing in practice. Most anxiety exists because the mind is trying to control what belongs to the future. You replay conversations before they happen. You fear rejection before it arrives. You obsess over success before action is even complete. And without realizing it, your energy becomes trapped in imaginary scenarios rather than directed toward meaningful action in the present moment. This is why overthinking creates paralysis. The mind becomes so consumed with outcomes that it loses connection with execution. You stop acting naturally because every action becomes loaded with emotional pressure. Even simple interactions become performances. Every message must be perfect. Every decision must guarantee success. Every effort becomes contaminated by fear of failure. And ironically, this desperate need for control produces the very instability you are trying to avoid. People sense tension. Opportunities collapse under pressure. Creativity disappears under fear. The harder you cling, the more fragile everything becomes. The Stoics understood that peace begins when you stop demanding certainty from life, because certainty was never promised to you. Control was never absolute, and the more quickly you accept this, the lighter your spirit becomes. 2. Why desperation pushes everything away. There is something deeply paradoxical about life. The more emotionally desperate you become for something, the further it often moves away from you. When you desperately need validation, you become inauthentic. When you desperately need success, fear clouds your judgment. When you desperately need love, attachment transforms into insecurity. This happens because desperation distorts behavior. It shifts your focus away from truth and toward emotional survival. You no longer act from clarity. You act from fear of losing, fear of rejection, fear of uncertainty. And fear has a way of silently sabotaging everything. Marcus Aurelius wrote extensively about emotional discipline, not because emotions are evil, but because uncontrolled attachment blinds judgment. A person ruled by fear cannot think clearly. A person obsessed with outcomes cannot remain steady. This is why some people suddenly become more attractive the moment they stop chasing attention. Why opportunities appear after someone stops obsessing over success. Why peace arrives only after exhausting attempts to force happiness. Because calmness has power. A detached mind sees clearly. A desperate mind sees only threats. And once you understand this, you begin to realize that many of your struggles were not created by reality itself, but by the emotional tension you carried into reality. 3. Detachment is not giving up. Many people misunderstand Stoicism because they confuse detachment with indifference. But the Stoics never taught emotional numbness. They taught freedom. There is a profound difference between caring deeply about your actions and becoming emotionally imprisoned by outcomes. A Stoic still works hard, still loves deeply, still pursues greatness, still builds, creates, struggles, and sacrifices. But internally, they understand a deeper truth. Their peace cannot depend on external events remaining favorable forever. This changes everything. When you detach from outcomes, you stop acting from panic. You stop trying to force people to understand you. You stop exhausting yourself, seeking approval from those committed to misunderstanding you. You stop begging life to unfold exactly according to your expectations. And suddenly, your actions become more powerful because they are no longer contaminated by emotional chaos. You begin to speak more clearly, move more calmly, think more rationally, and live more presently. Not because life became easier, but because your inner resistance weakened. The Stoics believed suffering often comes not from events themselves, but from our judgments about them. And once you stop mentally fighting every uncomfortable experience, something extraordinary happens. Your energy returns to you. 4. The moment you let go, clarity returns. Most people live in a constant state of mental noise. Their minds are crowded with imagined futures, unresolved fears, comparisons, regrets, and invisible pressures. And in that noise, they lose contact with reality itself. But letting go creates silence, and silence creates clarity. When you stop obsessing over how everything must unfold, you finally begin to notice what actually matters. Your attention returns to the present. Your instincts sharpen. Your actions become more natural because they are no longer filtered through anxiety. This is why some of the most important breakthroughs in life happen after surrender. Not surrender to defeat, but surrender to reality. You stop trying to force love. You stop trying to force recognition. You stop trying to force timing. And strangely, life begins to open, not magically, not instantly, but naturally. Because calm attention is more effective than emotional force. The Stoics understood that the disciplined mind is not the mind that controls everything externally. It is the mind that remains steady internally, regardless of what happens externally. And that inner steadiness changes the way you experience everything. 5. Real power begins. When fear ends, at the root of unhealthy attachment is fear. Fear of failure, fear of abandonment, fear of insignificance, fear that if things do not work out, you will somehow become less worthy. But Stoicism dismantles this illusion completely. Your worth was never created by outcomes. It was created by character. A person of discipline remains worthy in failure. A person of integrity remains valuable in loss. A person of wisdom remains powerful even in uncertainty. This is why the Stoics focused so intensely on internal mastery, because external circumstances are unstable by nature. Wealth disappears, status changes, people leave, plans collapse. Life remains unpredictable no matter how carefully you organize it. But character, that is something you can build permanently. And once your identity becomes rooted in character rather than outcomes, fear begins to lose its grip over you. You stop living anxiously. You stop needing constant reassurance. You stop forcing life. And ironically, that is often when your relationships improve, your decisions sharpen, your confidence deepens, and your opportunities expand. Because people trust calmness. Life responds better to clarity than desperation. Final emotional close. The truth is, most people spend their entire lives trying to control what was never theirs to control. They grip tightly to outcomes, opinions, recognition, and certainty, only to discover that the tighter they hold, the more exhausted they become. But the Stoics understood something timeless. Peace begins where control ends. The moment you stop forcing life to obey your expectations, you finally begin to live it. You begin to move with clarity instead of fear, intention instead of desperation, discipline instead of emotional chaos. And perhaps that is the real secret behind why everything starts working once you stop caring in the wrong way. Because when fear no longer controls your actions, your mind becomes free. And a free mind is one of the most powerful things a human being can possess. If this message resonated with you, subscribe to Stoic Thryve and continue the journey toward discipline, clarity, and inner mastery. Because in a world addicted to noise, emotional control is becoming a rare form of strength.